We'd been having this conversation and I was driving one day and it just kind of came to me, like, what if we had our merch be vintage? And I called Lauren on our team and said,
I have the craziest idea, like, what if our merch was vintage?
She immediately was like, oh my God, yes, let's do it.
Fun.
Could you like ASMR on this? I'm Lainey, the founder and CEO of Saie, and I'm here to tell you about Saie Vintage. Saie Vintage is our merch. Every single piece is vintage. We curate and source it, and we put our logo on it. The jean jackets are one of my favorite pieces. So when I started Saie, I was really thinking about how we could, from a 360 point of view, holistically make beauty better. And beauty is a very difficult industry to do sustainably. One of our pillars and something that's so important and I'm so passionate about is our environment and having the smallest footprint possible. Our community had been asking us for all sorts of merch for a really long time. And obviously the name of our brand comes from our community saying what they want. You say it, we create it. So we felt like we weren't answering a desire they had, but we just couldn't really wrap our brains around how we would have fast fashion be part of Saie.
I'm Lauren. I'm the director of community at Saie. We're at a rag house in downtown Los Angeles looking for vintage for our next Saie Vintage drop. Excited to see what we find.
So what kind of collection do you want to do? I don't know. I really want it to be... God, I'm gonna have to practice talking on camera.
I've been interested in vintage for a really long time, kind of by accident. My dad would take us to thrift stores all the time when I was a kid, so we were always really shopping secondhand, and I realized there was just so much cool stuff that you can find, and a lot of that stuff was super old, so I started collecting vintage in high school. One shocking thing I learned is that the average consumer throws away like 82 pounds of clothing a year. I even worked in fast fashion, like my first job in fashion was fast fashion, and just seeing how much like would get delivered to the retail stores every day, seeing how many samples that would get put out there, and then even becoming a vintage buyer, I just like realized there's just so much on earth already, like just shop what's already here.
According to UN Environment Program, fashion accounts for about 10% of humanity's carbon emissions. That's more than all international flights and shipping combined. The fashion industry is responsible for 20% of the 300 million tons of plastic produced globally each year. A recent report from International Conservation of Nature estimates that 35% of ocean microplastics come from the laundering of synthetic textiles. The incredible thing about vintage is that you are reusing something that already exists. There is no waste. You are not creating anything, and it's even more special than something that is just kind of quickly made. Let me just tell like a little story about my parents. I grew up in a very earth-minded family. I was born in Colorado. My parents were huge outdoorsmen. I actually just found one of my dad's old Patagonia jackets, and everyone was saying it was so cool because it's vintage, but my parents have just been doing that really naturally. Reusing, mending, recycling. They're pieces that just last forever and are so just utilitarian, but also very cool looking.
Brooke and I were vintage buyers for different companies in LA at the same time. She was one of the first partners I thought about for Saie Vintage. She's also a very talented chain stitcher, which I thought could like add the customization element to our vintage pieces.
I needed to have like a name, and I literally just wrote Large Lemonade down, and then it just stuck.
My name is Brooke Feuerstein. We are in my home studio today. Large Lemonade is a chain stitch embroidery company. My husband and I started the company in 2018.
What's up, guys? I'm Zach.
I got an opportunity to work solely on a chain stitch embroidery machine. From the second I learned, I was constantly on the machine for like 10 hours a day. Back in the day when they did the original Mickey ears, this was one of the machines that they used. The motor is controlled by my foot pedal, and then everything is hand steered by me. Saie Vintage was a really fun opportunity for us. We get to go to these really fun rag houses all over LA, and dig through just giant bins of vintage garments and collect all the best pieces we can for your clients. And then we get to come here back to the studio and embroider the Saie logo on top of it.
Ready?
I actually remember when we launched Saie Vintage, we had this gorgeous editor press preview day. And I remember every editor coming in and saying, you know, everyone's going to copy you, right? And I was like, great. That would make me so happy if people started using more vintage and talking about the importance of reusing and reducing. There are so many clothes out there, and warehouses and football fields full of clothes that already exist. There's a stat out there that says we have enough clothes on the planet now to clothe the next 6 generations. I hope that this documentary influences people. I hope it inspires them. I hope it provides a time capsule for us to look back at what we've done and really paving the way.